So Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So biohacking, it sounds very complicated. I think a lot of people have certainly heard about it in recent years. It's becoming more and more, I'm going to say fashionable, but not just fashionable. Obviously, a lot more people these days are taking their health a lot more seriously. So for people that maybe aren't aware of what biohacking is and maybe haven't heard about it before, what is it?
It is, in very simple terms, health optimization. That's what it is. It's known for its funky technology or supplements or bulletproof coffee, which is obviously where the father of biohacking, came from with his bulletproof coffee, which we can touch on in a bit. But it is, defined as the art and science of optimizing the environment inside of you and outside of you to take control of your own biology, which is the goal, to optimize your health. The label obviously is very well known on biohacking. It's a funky term. It's really made health fashionable. But with my European friends and colleagues, biohacking, while it is at the forefront, it's not quite so accessible to the general population, which is why I relabeled my conference, my digital course, obviously, Health Optimisation Summit and Health Optimisation Program. Because actually, once upon a time, my mum said to me, what's a biohacker? And I said, it's someone that optimizes their health using, supplements, nature, technology, and all these things. So really, it's much more understood that way.
Absolutely. And I think by you saying that, and obviously you've made a strategic decision to change various names, is that if every time someone says, what's biohacking, you explain it as health optimization, they go, oh, right, now I get it. It makes sense. But you've already mentioned there's various sort of tech and certain products that you can use and products that you can not use as well. Things that we use in our everyday life that we've used for our whole lives that we either cut out or use in a different way to how people would normally use it. But what I would also like to touch on, what you just mentioned, is the art and science of health optimization, because it's not just this creative thing of, we're going to try all these new different crazy plant-based medicines and do all this crazy stuff. There is a science to being able to replicate the outcome. So for you personally, when you're looking to optimize your health, what's the outcome that you're optimizing for?
Well, it's a really good question. I just want to touch on something, just because people that hear the label biohacking, they often say, oh, is that like having a chip implant, for instance, like transhumanism? It's not. That's transhumanism, or editing and I always say this, actually, editing your cat's genes so it glows in the dark, which is really well known in the CRISPR movement. That's not biohacking as we know it. The media may push that to make it sound more extreme, but it's not that at all. So I think that's one thing I just want to define, because people listening to this might think, oh, biohacking is that crazy weird stuff. It's not. It's very, very simple, but tracking. So for me, my goal is always optimal health. And then obviously you've got subsets within that. So, what do you define as optimal health? Do you have a migraine once a week or once a month, or, you have really bad hangovers that you didn't used to get, for instance? That could be a goal. Or are you fatigued, or you don't sleep properly, or you wake 3 times in the night or twice in the night to go pee when you didn't used to, you always have an ache or a pain or a dodgy knee, or whatever the goal may be. It's really an individualized approach to optimizing or fixing something that's gone wrong. Now, obviously there's 2 sides of this. And I think number 1 is, are you doing it to fix something that's gone wrong? Or are you doing something to make sure that something doesn't go wrong? So think of it like, servicing your car once a year. You do it even when it hasn't gone wrong. You don't like the bill, but the point is, it stops you breaking down on the motorway. So we have that approach with our cars most of the time. And in fact, the government force us to get our cars MOT'd every year so that it doesn't necessarily not break down, but it is, safe. We don't necessarily do that with our bodies. We only go to the doctors when we're ill. So that's one thing just to define within it. There's 2 subsets: the sick people that are the most motivated, and they will do whatever they have to do. The doctors haven't been able to help them because chronic health issues aren't generally well dealt with in the traditional medical system, but emergency care is. So when something's gone wrong, they're good at cleaning it up, Chronic stuff, not so much. And that's really where biohacking comes in. It helps you prevent, so preventative health. It's good. That's why it's really well adopted with the smart guys that are the high performers, the billionaires that are out there, reach out and want to work with me because they want to make sure that they can operate at 100% all the time. And when they've had a taste of this, they realize how much of an edge they can have over everyone else, whether a city trader or a performance athlete. Once they know, and they're stuck to it. The same as the motivation with someone that's ill that would do anything to get back out on the street again because they're stuck in bed. And then the general population, which don't realize the power of it, that actually should be preventing their health by implementing some of these things. So while your question was direct in saying, what do you do and why, it's much broader than that. So for me, I had chronic fatigue. I had kidney stones, I had bloating, I had urinary tract infections, I had a whole host of things that were going on that hit me very hard after I'd been traveling and after I'd had actually a rabies vaccine. Not that I'm pro or against vaccines before people start going, whoa, he's going down that road. I'm not going there. I'm not pro, I'm not against. Everything has its place. But so I started getting chronically ill from that point, and being a high performer, and I was running 2 7-figure companies at the time, and traditionally have started companies, scaled companies, and then sold companies. I was to the point where I couldn't get out of bed. And as a high performer, my mindset was power on, always power on, power on. And people that got sick were weak. And then when I got sick, I realized actually, I have to treat my body like it's a company. I need to look at the systemic issues. I need to look at the cause and effect things that are going on, and not just, fire someone that's done something wrong. Look at the systems of why that person operates in that way and the reporting system. So for me, I looked at all the different symptoms. I mapped them out with Post-it notes on the wall, every single symptom, and put them into a cause and effect chart, almost like a family tree. Point that would have the maximum impact from the top-down approach. So while that sounds really complicated, it's actually very simple. It came down to initially having metal fillings in my mouth, which I'm quite well known for talking about mercury poisoning and whatnot. Mercury is in my mouth. I started getting ill a few years later, which meant my body didn't detoxify properly, which meant that I was dehydrated because mercury affects mineralization and cellular health, which means nutrients can't get in the cell as easy, or toxins can't get out of the cell so easy. So detoxifying metals, getting the metals out of my mouth was, a key point of that. And then things like my frequent urination, and I was going pee, no exaggeration at all, 30 to 50 times a day at one point, because my minerals were so out of whack. When you drink water that's low in minerals, your body just pees it out because you need more water to get more minerals. So, there was a couple of systemic things that were fixed fairly easily, but it took me, 5, 6, 7 years to really figure out and piece these things together. And, obviously functional medicine and things like that weren't quite so prevalent when I started getting ill around 2010, 2011. So it really took a long time to piece them together. And in fact, shameless plug kind of is that I launched a digital course this week, piecing together the fundamentals and things that the building blocks that you should have in place, not only to fix, chronic health issues that the traditional system doesn't necessarily look at, but also make sure that you can perform at your peak as well. And that's really, looking at the hydration piece, your daily routine, the circadian rhythm, and making sure that you're hydrating and eating at the right time, training at the right time, sleeping properly, and what to do about that, your movement and exercise and things like that. So really, it comes back down to those fundamentals. And had I have done those before I got ill, I wouldn't have got ill. I'm 99.99% certain of that.
I think one of the reasons why I love the work that you do, and I've followed you on Instagram for a while, is that you're about treating the cause, the root cause, rather than the symptoms. In the work that I do with my clients, a lot of the reason they get success so quickly is because we go right to the root cause very quickly and deal with that. You've mentioned that the health service, here in the UK, where many people will be listening to this, obviously we've got the National Health Service, which is phenomenal and has been for hundreds of years. But if we're really honest, the National Health Service isn't the National Health Service, it's the National Sick Service. You know, you go there when you're sick, and then they help you get back to health. You mentioned preventative healthcare, which is where I personally believe the next 10, 20 years is where we're really going to see some significant change of more people investing in preventative measures, like you mentioned you would with an MOT on a car, because then everyone knows, right? Well, I get my car MOT because I don't want the engine to blow up and it costs me a fortune further down the line. But we don't think of that with our body because maybe we can get it on the NHS or whatever. Whereas if we were paying it out of our own pocket, we might have a slightly different opinion. And I think it's really, really key.
I mean, I think just 2 points on that is that, I mean, the breaking point for me, and I feel disingenuous saying this actually, because I've said it so many hundreds of times, but it was a real turning point, a critical moment in the whole journey. And I think it is for many people as well, actually, but slightly different context. But I was at the doctor's after being in every single day for a whole week, you know, and I was in tears. I was at the end of the road. I was almost, but wasn't suicidal. You know, like, really, I just want this to be over. I can't take this anymore. And I just said to him, you know, doctor, what's up with me? And he just shrugged his shoulders and said, I don't know, you can't find anything wrong. You know, and a colleague of mine, Martin Tobias, who's was the CEO of the Bulletproof Upgrade Labs, he actually went to the doctors once upon a time and said to the doctor, you know, I'm feeling great. What can I do to be better? He said, no, everything's fine. He goes, yeah, no, I know everything's fine, but what can I do to be better? And the doctor said, nothing. And he said, well, I don't believe that to be true. I mean, obviously, Martin adjusted his diet and tried keto and tracking his blood glucose with a constant glucose monitor and things like that. And, you know, he's significantly better shape now. And yet for the doctors, it's tick, there's nothing wrong. So I think that's where the NHS is. It's a good, it's a cleaning up act. And I think if some of these strategies were put in place, and I get asked this a lot, you know, do you think you can fix the NHS, Tim? No, I can't. But I do think that if everyone empowered, they stuff happening in the emergency thing, always going to be there. Life is always life. Things are always going to happen. But having the basic building blocks in place and knowing what they are would change that significantly, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And you mentioned those building blocks. It's like we say, the foundations, isn't it? It's the foundations of what we do. Let's talk a little bit about some of these foundations then. So I'm a huge fan of accountability, and my whole coaching philosophy is built on three very simple elements. One of the things that I've strived to do is learn really complex things and make them very, very simple. And to achieve success, however you define success, in my opinion, is clarity, action, accountability. That accountability piece is absolutely vital. And I know that you personally, this may have changed, gone up or down slightly, but certainly used to have 35 different measurements or forms of tracking that you use on a daily basis to optimize your health. Is that still the case? No,
I dropped it actually, because at that point I was much sicker. And I mean, I've always got things to work on, I'm not going to lie. I mean, that's why I'm in the health space, because I wanted to optimize my health. And I still remain in it today, optimizing my health, trying to improve where I have, things going on. But I think we go through this process when someone becomes sick, whether it's chronically sick. It needs to be chronically sick, sorry. But so if I go back to before I was ill, I didn't know I was ill. I bloated when I ate pasta, or I would be fatigued some days, or my hangovers got horrendous that would last days. At that time, I just thought, oh, that's human, that's normal. And then when you get chronically ill, so basically you're oblivious to the things that are going on, yeah, and you're not paranoid about them. You just go, oh well, this is life. And then when you start getting chronically ill, and it lasts for several months at a time minimum, and you're like, I've got a new twitch. What does this mean? Yeah, and you're hyper alert about everything that's going on. Oh my God, I've got a grey hair. Does that mean I've got oxidative stress going on with something or other? Blah, 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 whatever. So you go through not knowing and not caring to knowing and caring and being hyper alert, which obviously puts you in a sympathetic state, so a fight or flight state, which stresses you out. And your stress hormones are going like crazy, which means that impairs your immune system, so you actually get worse. And then, you know, say after 3 or 4 or 5 years of chronic health issues, when I was figuring a lot of this stuff out, it's like, oh, okay, well, there's a twitch that would be gone, you know, in 48 hours, or, oh, you know, or I've got, you know, a spot come up here, you know, that doesn't mean anything, it's going to be gone. You know, you don't need to be hyper alert about stuff. So you start going, you go from nothing to hyper alert and stress to back down again and monitoring it over a period of time and chilling out. So tracking my 35 points of data is actually significantly more than that in many days, especially if I include my Oura Rings data as well as various other things that I track. But I kind of said, okay, measuring the amount of times I go pee a day, how many times I go poo a day, what the scale is on the Bristol stool scale, what my urine pH is, and all these things. It's nice to know, and it's very diagnostic, and it's good to be able to do charts retrospectively when I give a talk. But really, it's that hyper alert state of going, oh my God, my pH is off today. What does this mean? So I let go of it, and I track the things that I need to track on a daily basis with my Oura Ring, occasionally with a pee test strip if I feel I need to, if I feel like I have a UTI symptom or something or other, which I don't generally these days. And then I get my routine bloods done maybe once every 6 weeks now, and that, you know, significant panel, I'm not going to lie. And then the various other tests that companies reach out to me to test and talk about on my Instagram. So that was a really long answer, but my point is that I don't do it anymore because you're hyper alert, you're hyper stressed, your stress hormones are through the roof, your immune system gets hampered, and it has a negative effect for your health, even though the intent is to help optimize your health, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. You mentioned obviously an Oura Ring, and a lot of people, maybe if they haven't heard of an Oura Ring, then there's the is it the Whoop band, or even just an iWatch? You know, an iWatch or a Fitbit tracks some element of data, albeit in different ways. What is it when you are looking at your Oura Ring stats, for example? What is it that you are checking on a daily basis?
I look through, well, the first thing I look at is my heart rate, resting heart rate through the night. Mm-hmm. 2 hours before, and I have my blue blocking glasses, and I have trimethylglycine before bed, and plenty of mineralized water, then my heart rate comes down by about 10 beats a minute. That's mainly because my body is supported, it has the right minerals, so the body can repair through the night, and it's in a parasympathetic state. So that really does help. So that gives me an indication, obviously, about the heart rate. Heart rate variability is one of the best indicators for overall health, especially vascular health and physical side of things. So I look to improve my heart rate variability, and typically it was very low. So that's another one. So also I like to look at the deep sleep, REM sleep, light sleep, total sleep time, which are obviously key for me. And also activity to make sure I hit my at least 10,000 steps. And I know that they say that 10,000 steps is debunked, but 10,000 steps is a bloody good goal to get to on a daily basis. And then the last one is calories. Now, I know I'm not a calories in, calories out fan per se, because there's actually no such thing as a calorie. It's just a rough indicator of energy in or energy out. But I like to monitor my calories usage on the Oura as well, because I'm trying to bulk. I shouldn't really say trying, I am bulking, but I've hit a plateau right now, even at 3,000 calories a day, even at 3,300 calories actually, with 300 grams of protein. I've been testing for multiple weeks now and still can't get over my current body weight. So looking at calories to map against calories against exercise to see how much of a excess I have and how far I gain in body weight. So those are the key things really from the Oura Ring that I really like.
Cool. So, but before we get into the different elements of what you can essentially biohack or optimize, I want to talk about two things. One that you brought up, which a lot of people have, or it's just normal, you know, just having that sound. Well, it's just normal to have a 2-day hangover when you get over 30. It's just normal to get up in the middle of the night and go to the toilet multiple times as you get older. And it's just having that belief, that limiting belief that keeps people stuck in a situation because they think it's just status quo rather than looking at making those changes. So what do you find that some of the are some of the quickest wins that people get when it comes to starting to optimize?
Quickest wins they get. Good question. I mean, it really depends. That's quite a wide question. I would say most.
Sorry, I should sort of invert, because that is a very broad question. But take your program, obviously the optimization program. If people introduce the foundations, let's just say the foundations, what are the quick wins that they tend to get from introducing those?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have mental brain fog, so lack of mental clarity, or they have energy slumps, or problems with sleep. Those are generally the biggest issues that people will have on a day-to-day basis. And I think high performers like the mental clarity aspect, because they come to me about nootropics all the time. It can often be very basic. For instance, people with mental clarity issues are generally dehydrated, and they should be adding Celtic sea salt into their water 3 or 4 times a day, half a teaspoon. That's usually the biggest win.
Can we just jump on that one really quickly? And the reason why is because I literally have two jugs of water on my desk every day, work through them, and one of the things that I found that you've already alluded to is when I was just drinking, I always used to have lemon in my water, and it would just go through me, and I'd still feel thirsty, which is crazy. So I'm drinking 4 liters of water a day. How am I still thirsty? But it was only when I started adding pink Himalayan salt or Celtic sea salt. And I believe I'm right in saying that it's because then that's what enables the cells to actually absorb the water rather than it just pass through you. I mean, I could be wrong, but you'll no doubt correct me.
I mean, yeah, that's it. That's an okay way of saying it. Yeah. Basically, different minerals do different things to us. And I read about 30 books a year. 1 year I read nearly 60. I like to collect lots of information, organize it in my brain, and then put it to an abstract so I can explain it in a really digestible format, opposed to being a scientist that gets stuck down in metabolic pathways, which I don't. The way of putting it, I would say that each individual mineral does a different thing to us. Many do many things, obviously. Many do many things, sorry. And often potassium specifically helps us retain water. Now, when we drink, we actually drink for two main purposes. Number one, sorry about these notifications, I'm going to log out to them. Number one is water is there to flush out toxins. So to obviously aid our blood and our kidneys to flush out toxins that are coming out into our system. So that's number one. So we need a certain amount of water for that. When we have too much water, we pee. Okay. How do we govern that we have too much water? Or, well, actually, I'll take that back a step. We also drink, number two, to get minerals into us. Minerals are electrolytes. Electrolytes fuel our electrical system, which means that our body can work optimally. If we're deficient in minerals, our adrenals are stressed because they have to kick in, and because let's just say, our wiring becomes significantly less, and the body's trying so hard to get energy around the body, it can't cope without the wiring in place. Yeah, so that's really the basics of it. Now, if we drink water that is low in minerals, our body is saying, holy crap, we need more minerals in us. Drink more water, because you need to get more minerals in that water. So we drink more water. But because we're drinking more water needs to come out, and yet we're still craving the minerals. And what happens is we're actually flushing out more and more and more minerals as we're drinking more and more water. So our blood becomes lower in electrolytes, which is counterproductive. Now, we evolved drinking from streams, which was water that came through rocks and from springs, obviously, that was very high in minerals. It's live water. Nowadays, we drink bottled water, which has gone through various processes, been put in plastic bottles, and also actually met with someone very senior in one of the water companies, and they know absolutely and utterly that if the water is low in minerals, we will drink more water, thus selling more water, which is why the water industry is absolutely huge. I can't remember the stats in billions, but it is massive. So how many people do you see walking around with a bottle of water everywhere? We would drink 2 or 3 times a day from a stream, or our ancestors would. And that's because of the minerals. So to take it back to your point is that if you add Celtic sea salt in, which is the best because it's most mineral similar to our blood composition, and that's something to do with us evolving apparently from the sea. So we have very similar makeup for that. Adding in the Celtic sea salt will actually tell our bodies, oh, you've got the minerals you need, so you don't need to drink more water. So you will drink generally 1.5 litres to 2 litres a day instead of 3 or 4 litres a day. And you won't pee as much. You won't wake in the night to pee because you're retaining the water because of the minerals in the water. And also, yeah, the cells are hydrated, so therefore you're not peeing so much. For me specifically, going back to the mercury toxicity, mercury messes or competes for the cell, should I say. And a very basic way of saying it would be that mercury, say for instance, you have a cell which is like a glass, mercury is in the cell, magnesium or potassium, whatever, can't get in the cell because the mercury is filling it up. So it's kind of, so when you get the mercury out, you can then get potassium or magnesium in. So for me, I was deficient in potassium significantly, and by testing each one of the minerals one by one, I found that potassium actually helped me retain my water, and I went from peeing 30 to 50 times a day every day for many years, like probably 3 years, to peeing 5 or 6 times a day within a few days. And so whenever anyone goes to pee frequently, I go, oh, that's, it's about the 7th time you've done it today, try potassium. And then they tell me a week later that it's absolutely changed them and they don't wake in the night anymore. So it's really important. And that is a classic example of one of the fundamentals that is so blatantly obvious to all of us, and yet we just don't know it and no one talks about it. And when I got my kidney stones, the doctors just said, drink more water. He didn't say filtered water without toxins in because there's antibiotics and hormones in the water system. He didn't say add minerals in, otherwise you're going to dehydrate yourself. He just said don't eat strawberries because they're high in oxalates. Wow. I'm no doctor, but I can run circles around them when it comes to this topic, and several others, because I've tested it on myself. Whereas, would you like to learn to drive a car from never driven a car, that just read it from a textbook, or would you like to learn to drive a car from someone that's actually driven a car? While I'm not a doctor and can't talk about medical things, I can help guide for you to look and test the things that might be appropriate for optimal health and performance where the doctor can't.
Absolutely. I want to, before we get talking about some more of these fundamentals, I also want to talk about optimizing in general, because a really good friend of mine, who I'm going to make a shout out, he's one of the best osteopaths I'm aware of, arguably one of the best in the country, a guy called Chris Branch, and he's phenomenal at what he does. And he talks about what are you optimizing for when it comes to your health, because you could be how you optimize for longevity is going to be very different to how you would optimize for strength, for example, and how you would optimize if you're going to run a marathon, you're going to eat very differently to how you would run a sprint. And I think it's really interesting. So for you personally, what is it that you're optimizing for? What's the main goal? Or maybe has that changed? Does that evolve for you as the years go by?
Yeah, good question. I always wanted to optimize my mental performance, my mental clarity, because my assumption was, if I fix my mental clarity, I've got the brain power to study. If I've got the brain power to study, I can fix my energy. If I can fix my energy, I can fix my immune system, and then I can get back to normal. So it's a multiple pronged approach. Yeah. And that was always my goal. There's multiple things that I've done over the years, actually ridiculous amounts. I have had chronic health issues, and I tested positive for the Lyme co-infections, about a year ago as well, which would explain some of the chronic things that I've been struggling with, but which has always been undetected. But really, for me, it's to maintain my peak performance and, have as few down days as possible. But, sickness does catch us all. Also resilience. Like, for instance, last year during COVID, I came back to the UK from America, beginning of April, stayed 6 weeks, and then traveled through Europe all the way through pretty much to the end of November, all the way across Europe on trains, and wasn't careful. I wore a mask out of respect when anyone wanted me to, or when, you know, legally required to do so. I washed my hands after I went to the toilet or whatnot, but I didn't do any more than that. And did my best to try and catch, you know, or get the antibodies, should I say. I didn't, and I couldn't, you know, and I was in Venice at peak time. And, you know, people say I'm mad for carrying around X amount of supplements or whatever, which I changed depending on my goal at the time. Mine was obviously to be resilient, and it kind of worked. I still might catch it. It might catch me out, but I've done my best to, you know, be one of the early adopters. So yeah, so really it's about resilience, mental clarity, energy, and performing at my absolute best, and being able to study more, and, you know, run the summit, run the digital course, and continue with my Instagram, and just have fun in the world, basically.
Cool. Sounds good. So you've touched on a few of these already, but I want to touch on a couple of different areas that people can look to optimize, or that they might look to biohack, to use the terminology. So we've got things like sleep, dental, which I know something you're big on. You already touched on fillings, metal fillings, food, obviously, your gut and digestive systems, routines, hydration, we've touched on, minerals, we've touched on, psychedelics and nootropics as well, and your environment. So, I mean, around those different things, I mean, I don't know if it's something that we can maybe do touch on maybe a couple of each of them as some tips for the people that are listening, and work through like that, if that works for you, or if you've got another way that you think we can work through.
It's good.
So sleep then. So people want to look at improving sleep. They're having broken sleep, poor sleep. What would be the typical go-tos?
Well, the first point would be if they are playing with their phone, or they have fake light on in the house, not candlelight or firelight, but if they have fake light on in the house, within 3 hours of going to bed, they can improve their sleep by wearing blue blocking glasses.
So for people that are watching on YouTube, getting a set of these, no doubt there's many that in fact, I know you've got an Amazon shop, haven't you, with various different suggestions that you recommend. I'll put that in the show notes so people can access that for various things that we touch on.
So blue blocking glasses. We need an absence of 3 hours before bed, melatonin secretion. Oh, it's paused. You're back. Okay,
yeah, now
good. So we need 3 hours without blue light before going to bed for optimal melatonin secretion. We help produce melatonin during the day we get from natural light, and then we secrete it once there is an absence of blue light. So blue light blocking glasses obviously trick the body into thinking that it's nighttime, that there's no blue light, which you then start secreting melatonin and get ready for bed. So you need that for 3 hours. That is my non-negotiable biohack wherever I go. If I want to get tired, I stick them on in the evening early. So like if I'm on a date or something or other, I definitely don't put them on, not because I care how I look with them on. It's because I don't want to start falling asleep. So it's like, that's one way to be stimulated, is the blue light. So that's number one for sleep. The other thing is if you're waking up in the middle of the night to pee, that's often a mineral imbalance, or it can be, if you're a guy, a prostate issue. But generally it's mineral imbalance. It can also be down to hormones as well, because your daily routine is out, so your body still thinks it's during the day, so therefore you haven't got the hormone that is stopping you from peeing, basically. So balancing your day, it helps optimize your sleep. And I mean, for instance, if you think back to an ancestor, and I'll be really quick on this, they would wake with blue light in a cave with natural light. They wouldn't have an alarm clock. They didn't need it. They would then do their higher intensity exercise by going, killing an animal, or collecting fruit, or playing with the kids or whatever. They would then eat around lunchtime and then again in the afternoon. And they wouldn't have access to food in a fridge, so they would have it in the side of the cave, which would, go off if once it's been out for a certain amount of time. And so therefore they would have fermented foods, and it would be fresh and local and seasonal. So they'd be rotating the food seasonally, and they wouldn't necessarily get the intolerances that we get at the moment, because they're rotating food. So then the sun would go down, and they would probably eat with campfire latest. They would then head to bed because it's nighttime, they would have no blue light and they would sleep until the sun rises again. Now, sleep is a behavior that prevailed within our ancestors and us today for a reason. The ones that didn't sleep didn't survive. And the ones that slept during the day probably got eaten, because animals sleep at night for the most part as well. So optimizing your day, knowing when you would exercise or should do to not increase stress hormones. For instance, people that finish work and then go and exercise at the gym at 7 or 8 o'clock, they're going to be spiking their cortisol levels. They're going to have stress when they need to be winding down. They're going to be pumped before they go to bed. And while they may think they sleep well, they actually don't. So exercising in the morning all the way up to 3 p.m. is ideal. And using blue blocking glasses and making sure that you're eating basically no later than sunset, because once sun sets, we have certain genes that switch off, and those genes govern how much insulin we create. So if you eat far after sunset, we produce up to 50 times less insulin, which means that our blood sugar levels are higher through the night. So instead of our organs being switched off and chilling out and helping detox and repair, it's actually still processing all the food that we've had through the day. And you can actually track this with the Oura Ring. And I've got a constant glucose monitor on as well. So if I eat later than sunset, my blood sugar is higher through the night. And then when my body finally finishes dealing with it at like 3 or 4 o'clock, that's when I drop into my deepest sleep. And whereas if I eat before sunset, my blood sugar comes straight back down again. I get into bed and I have deep sleep much, much quicker and better. So really that is optimizing your day to optimize your sleep, which is probably the single biggest thing you can ever do to optimize your health. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned about the day thing. I had one of the UK's leading sleep experts on the show about 2 months ago, and we spoke about exactly that, is that most night issues, sleep issues, are just dealt with by dealing with stuff in the day and changing stuff in the day, which was really interesting.
Who was it you had on?
Beatrix Schmidt.
Oh, I'm not aware of that. Yeah.
So what about dental? So obviously I know you've already mentioned about having metal fillings and things, but yeah, what about dental? And I suppose mouth and oral hygiene in general.
It's very complicated, but again, the more natural, better with everything. What did our ancestors have? They didn't have metal implants, which those metals interfere with. For instance, and it's been proven, there's actually studies on this in the journals as well, how metal attracts the EMFs. So actually you're getting concentrated EMFs into the body. It's almost an antenna. Dr. Dominic Nickschwitz, who's one of my dear friends, actually speaks about this quite often. He's the world's leading biological dentist. And so number one, metal free. One, because it's bad for EMFs, in my opinion, and two, because it's mercury, and mercury is, the second most neurotoxic substance known to man-made, not man-made, sorry, and that interferes with all sorts of biochemical processes in our body, especially enzymatic reactions, which means that we're going to have cellular deficiencies as a result. So it's an interference. So metal fillings out, definitely. If you've had a root canal treated tooth, even though dentists and everyone seems to say that it's completely safe to have a dead tooth in your body and all the bad bacteria is harbored, taken out, it's not. And often, and I've seen many case studies, I've seen many behind, cases of my colleagues of where, people have had serious health issues and, it stems back down to their dental work from having too many root canal treated teeth. You can also have oral imbalances of your microbiome, and especially, with certain sexual activities, if your oral microbiome would be off, then, or if you have any bad bacteria in your mouth when you're doing things with your partner, for instance, you can cause issues there, and vice versa. So it's about optimizing your oral microbiome, which is really important. There's a whole host of things. I mean, I think one of the most biological dentist things that you can do is obviously if you had a tooth taken out, a root canal or a root canal treated tooth, having an implant done that is a ceramic implant, basically, which that osteointegrates, the bone heals around it, and isn't an interference for EMFs. Also, when you see a metal implant on an X-ray, you'll see that the bone actually detracts away from the implant. It's almost like it doesn't like the metal, opposed to with a ceramic implant where the bone heals around it, it loves it, it treats it as bone. So, I mean, there's a documentary called Root Cause Documentary, which was banned from Netflix because dentists outraged about it because they said it was all bollocks. But in fact, you know, I know a lot of the guys behind the documentary. I know a lot of the science, and you know, the biological way is the future for dentistry, without a doubt. I mean, it's biohacking for the mouth, basically. And by treating cellular deficiencies, making sure the body's supported before surgery, removing root canal treated teeth, getting rid of metals, and balancing the oral microbiome, you know, a lot of chronic health issues actually reverse, and especially people with gut health issues. You know, they're spending all these monies on probiotics for their gut, but they've not fixed their mouth, and their mouth is always putting biotoxins into their gut. So they fix their gut, but it's always getting worse and never improving. You know, such as Candida is a big one. If you've got Candida in the mouth, it's going to be in the gut, but people only fix it in the gut, not in the mouth, and therefore they always have this issue. So that's why it's so vitally important to start with the mouth. And as my friend Dr. Dominic Nitris always says, health starts in your mouth.
So let's talk about that then. Let's go to food. So food, I suppose in certainly in recent years, there's been lots of different diets, everything from vegan diets, paleo diets, fasting, intermittent fasting, doing 3-day fast, 72-hour fasts. So yeah, what's your view with food then?
Food is energy, as is the sun, and the sun is a nutrient as well. And I talk about sunlight and how important it is for so many processes. I actually did a post on Instagram this week about, you know, what people think vitamin D is good for or sun is good for, and actually all the different things it's great for. Sun is a nutrient, and energy is nutrient energy as well. When we're in hot countries, we can eat salads because we're getting a lot more energy from the sun. When Eskimos are in, you know, freezing countries, they need, you know, nutrient dense fatty foods that gives them maximum energy. So, you know, there's an indication there of where they are on the planet. Salads are just eating vegetables on its own. You know, if it's personal choices based on ethics around animals, I understand. I completely understand. If it's for health, then I think they're batshit crazy, because, you know, just because of a documentary that came out on Netflix, Game Changers, which was absolutely and utterly debunked, the nutrients you get from a piece of meat is significantly more than you can get from vegetables. And you know, I've tried being vegan, I've tried plant-based, I've tried carnivore, I've tried keto, I've tried fasting for 28 days. I've done a juice diet for 28 days, 29 days as well, and everything in between. And I tried being vegan for the best part of a year, and it ruined me. And, you know, and I think if you look at food as energy, you need to get the best energy you can. And the micronutrients as well as the macronutrients, and balance those based on what you need. I mean, as we said just before recording, I eat 3,000 to 3,300 calories a day, and I'm eating anywhere between 200 and 350 grams of protein a day, which is insane levels. And I still can't put weight on above where my maximum is without taking something or other that turbocharges that. So whereas someone else, you know, I know someone that can eat 2,000 calories a day and fill up like a marshmallow man in weeks, you know, and there I am going, my God, I'm losing weight and I'm eating all this stuff. What's going on? So really it's a understanding that food, the macro of its energy, should also be very personalized. It should be very, very personalized, and making sure that you eliminate the toxins and then add in what you need based on your goals is important. So I feel like that was a lot of words and not giving a lot of substance. But my point is for instance, if your goal is to bulk up, use an app like MyFitnessPal, for instance, track your daily calories, your macros, make sure that you've got a well-rounded meal with plenty of plants and meat, balance the two. And when you see your weight going up, when you don't want it to, you know to trim back. And when you see it going down, when you want it to go up, you know you need to increase it. But if you only ever put natural, organic, and grass-fed meats and healthy food in, making sure that you eliminate gluten for everyone, because I think it has no place in the body. Go low lectin, definitely low oxalate. So that means cutting spinach and kale, because those are the sort of things that really make people pee a lot, especially because oxalates bind to minerals and can dehydrate you and also damage the gut and cause kidney stones and all sorts of things. And making sure that you eliminate traditional farmed dairy, but having raw dairy is fine, in my opinion.
So on that then, so you say farm dairy no, but raw. So what would be an example of raw dairy?
Well, you can go to your local farm that does raw milk.
Right. Okay. So having milk rather than having cheese, for example, where it's had some element of process.
It can be raw meat, raw dairy, raw cheese. Sorry, or raw milk. That's fine. But I think the thing is, milk is full of bacteria, which balances it very well. But when you start pasteurizing it and homogenizing it, it becomes a bastard product. It's ruined, and the gut doesn't know how to deal with it. And while some people say, oh, I can handle dairy okay, just about everyone becomes intolerant in some form at some point, or does something to them. But when milk is as it was meant to be, with the right bacteria levels, it actually repopulates the gut with the bacteria. But when you've killed that bacteria off, it imbalances it and causes issues. And then people have to add probiotics in to get the bacteria that would have been in the milk in the first place. So, I mean, type 2 Jersey cow milk is obviously the best dairy, in my opinion. But I never drink traditional milk, ever. And, you know, a lot of people actually have issues with it. A lot of people get really bad farts from it because they just don't have the enzymes to break it down. Whereas when they have raw dairy, often and not every time, they deal with it okay. And actually, there's one colleague of mine that was very lactose intolerant. And let's just say it was like he'd drunk a litre of brain octane oil, C8 oil, every time he had dairy. It was explosive. He drank just raw milk for a week, and that completely reversed it for him. And he didn't eat any other food, didn't have anything else other than raw dairy. It repopulated his gut so he could deal with normal milk afterwards. So, I mean, it dropped then, I think.
Yeah, we every 5 minutes or so we lose it for a few seconds, but it's fine. We'll edit it all out and it'll be edited and cut. So it's interesting with dairy. I mean, I've literally just with a nutritional therapist just started. So I get dark circles under my eyes, and I've never really understood why. I eat relatively well. I don't drink alcohol. I sleep sort of a good amount and all that good stuff. And she was saying recently it's to do with dairy. So I'm doing a dairy elimination diet for a little while and seeing how that has an impact. I mean, when I was born, I was allergic to all dairy, eggs, shellfish, nuts, and it sort of evolved over time. But yeah, I'm testing that, so that'll be interesting over the next month with no dairy.
Have a look into, obviously going low dairy or zero dairy is good, but also have a look into nucleotides as well. NUCLEOTIDES, nucleotides, and that basically is very good for the gut lining. Also look into silica, specifically silica for and proteolytic enzymes as well. So because silica helps with collagen production from the inside out, and helps build strong bones as well, which is also great. But if you want to fix your gut, nucleotides, silica, and obviously collagen with proteolytic enzymes, that's a winner right there for intolerances.
Sounds good. So let's talk about the gut then. One of your main reasons why you got into this, I know you mentioned your chronic health issues from sort of way back when, but as you've continued to optimize, it's about having cognitive function so that you can optimize your energy, you can process, you could run your businesses and do various things and operate at peak performance in that respect. We talk a lot about brain health and heart health, cardiovascular health and brain health, clearing brain fog, as you mentioned earlier. And then we talk a lot about the gut. Now, the gut these days is recognized as one of the three brains, and a lot of people, they don't give it the I suppose the maybe due care attention that they would other key organs. So yeah, what's your opinion on the importance of gut health?
It's massive. If people have anxiety or depression, first place I would look is the gut. Neurotransmitters help govern our moods and emotions, and often people with really bad guts have great anxiety or depression. Often reversing the gut issues helps with the emotion state. And so that's point one. And obviously neurotransmitters are a massive piece in this whole puzzle for mental health. And also having a bad gut can also contribute to mental health issues, but fixing the gut can also help. So it's a snowball effect. You fix it a bit and the mental health gets better, which means the mental health gets better and the gut gets better, and it's cycle. And the same negatively as well. Now, from my experience with my gut, I was on antibiotics for 3 months. They were heavy antibiotics. They ruined my gut to the point where I wasn't digesting food. It was coming out pretty much as it went in. And then that meant that I had obviously candida, serious bloating. I looked like I was pregnant. And I had stabbing pains in the digestive system, and it was bad. And the doctors, I actually went to King's College to see one of the very senior gastroenterologists about this. And I said, I've got stabbing pains and this and that and the other, and this is what's going on. I said, do you think I need probiotics because of the antibiotics? He said, no, there's no evidence in that. And I was like, okay, whatever. I thought and this is early in my journey. I went home and I brought some Yakult because that's the only probiotic I knew of at the time. Well, funnily enough, within 48 hours, the pain was a little bit better. The still was bloating like a massive. So I tried Yakult for three weeks or so, and it actually really, really helped. And I was just like, there's something in this, like it was a big difference. Obviously, I now know that Yakult is high in sugars, which obviously feeds yeasts and candida. But the bacteria is obviously helping to balance that and give me something I needed, which was great. I then started looking at different probiotics, and then I started doing gut testing. And this was a bio what I could to see if it actually helped me with my bloating. And then doing a juice diet, for instance, for a month. So there was no food in me. And then adding in prebiotics with probiotics and trying to repopulate the gut while it was empty, and then adjusting my diet so that they would stick after the juice diet. And so I was very diagnostic with that, and then obviously doing microbiome tests and rebalancing it over a period of time. So, and I reversed my gut issues massively. It's still not 100%, but I guess throughout my life it's never been 100%. I would say it's 99.9% now. The interesting thing here is, an association that not many people would have, is that when I went to see Dr. Dom Nitschwitz, he said, I know about your gut issues and this, that, and the other from the history I'd done. And he said often he finds patients' guts improve after they've had their root canal treated teeth taken out, because there's a biotoxin that you're obviously swallowing down into your gut, causing a gut imbalance. And it's funny because my gut went from being pretty erratic and all over the place to being 99.9% great within 48 hours of having my cavitation surgeries done.
I suppose it's one of the other reasons why you're so pro the way you are when it comes to dental hygiene, not just dental hygiene, but what's the term? I don't want to say fillings, but anything they might use, the materials used. Materials, that's a good, yeah.
And I mean, I've had dentists fight me saying, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Root canal treated teeth are fine," and blah blah blah. But actually, there was studies done that showed that I think it was 95 or 96% of women that had breast cancer on one side had a root canal treated tooth on the same side. Now, that may seem, okay, well, you can't say that. Well, I'm just saying what I've seen in the study. And the interesting thing is that many people have had teeth infection and actually had heart problems as a result. In fact, one of my colleagues, Dr. Harry Adelson, who's known for doing the full body stem cell surgery on Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield and these guys. He actually had the same thing, a tooth infection, which caused him a heart issue. Well, is it not then easy to assume that if you can get a heart problem, which is well documented from having a tooth infection, that it could do the same with other things systemically, such as breast cancer? Now, I'm not saying it's real. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying, it's worth exploring that. So having a look at the root cause documentary on Google would unpack this a lot further for people if they're interested.
Cool. Good to have for people to look into. The other thing that I want us to talk about, before there's one other thing I want to make sure that we touch on, which is your new course, is nootropics and psychedelics, in terms of using them to optimize and biohack your way to improved health.
Okay. Yeah, nootropics are a good one. I think a common issue is that a lot of people use them because they got brain fog. So they think taking the nootropic will actually get them back to where they should be or give them superhuman powers. That's the wrong approach. Like someone came to me the other week and said, which peptide should I use to give me better mental clarity? And I was like, okay, what's the diet like? What's the hydration like? And it's like, and they said, oh, well, we don't, haven't really done anything on that. I was like, go do that first. Get the fundamentals in place first, get them done properly, nail them. So yeah, nootropics are great, but they have their place. So for instance, the best nootropic you can have is actually Celtic sea salt in a glass of water 3 or 4 times a day. That would give you more mental clarity than most nootropics if you need that. If you don't need that,
sorry to interrupt. For people that don't know what a nootropic is, can you just explain your definition of a nootropic?
Nootropic is a smart drug, basically. That can be natural, such as alpha GPC or choline. It can be aniracetam, which actually plays on the way that the brain utilizes choline. You can have methylene blue, which are the things that give biohackers blue tongues, which is an early day pharmaceutical, which actually plays on the way that the body deals with oxygen, so therefore switches the mind on. But breath work can do that too, in my opinion. And yeah, there's various other ones as well. And obviously microdosing psilocybin or LSD is also known as a nootropic because the brain thinks in a different way. Not that you're high because it's a microdose, but it does still give you some of the chemical effects of the cognitive performance side of things. So yeah, start with the fundamentals, get the hydration right, make sure that your breathing is mouth time, testing with mouth, because if you mouth breathe, you're not producing enough nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, and therefore it obviously helps with oxygenation as well of the brain. And without oxygen, our brain becomes very stupid very quickly. So if you're doing breath work and hydrating properly, that has a synergistic effect on mental clarity. And often, people that come to me for a consult that have brain fog or energy issues, I get them to do some breath work and add in minerals, and hey presto, within 3 weeks they're magically good again. So those are the things to do before nootropics. But if you do want to explore nootropics once you're in that place, and if you're not, check out my course, because it really does lay these things out step by step of what to try in a diagnostic but simple approach. Aniracetam is my go-to favorite. I feel like it makes me. It makes me just have, those days where you're trying to work something out and your brain just goes to the answer straight away. Whereas other days you're sitting there and you're like, I'm trying to work this out right now. It takes me from sometimes being like that to being straight on it. But I like to stack them. So I like the methylene blue. I like the alpha GPC. I use Mindscopic, their smart drug, which is a natural based nootropic. And then I stack that with aniracetam, phenylpiracetam, oxiracetam, and Nudet.
And you take these every day?
No. Just when I've got some serious work to do, heavy workload, or really want to power on, I'll probably do it 1 day a week, something like that. But in Silicon Valley, microdosing LSD or psilocybin is very well known, and people do it. I know people that work there, and some of the big tech companies that do it 5 days a week. Psilocybin, microdose. People never know, but it makes them at the top of their game and have, cognitive powers that you can't quite put your finger on, but just
So almost like in the film Limitless is sort of the when a lot of people think of not to that extreme, but obviously not to that extreme. It's a film, it's fictional, but for a lot of people, it's that for people maybe you've never heard of some microdosing or nootropics before. It's that kind of effect, like a watered down version of that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you can't learn the language in an afternoon, but you will. It will give you a competitive advantage on other people that aren't using them, definitely. And I've built multiple companies on them. Like, for instance, I heavy dosed with them over one weekend and built my Hyperbaric Clinic about 5-6 years ago in the space of 2 weekends with nootropics and my laptop, and I built a clinic and had it opened within a month. And I built the Health Optimization Summit 2019 with a colleague, pretty much on nootropics the whole time, and we pulled it off in 8 months, and we, filled the hall. So there's a lot of cases where it really has given me a competitive advantage in being able to manage multiple things and get it all done every day. But I use it sparingly because you don't want it to become the normal and need something else on top of it.
Do you class caffeine as a nootropic?
Damn right. Yeah, 100%.
The reason I asked that question is because my understanding is it is one. A lot of people go, oh, I've never heard of nootropics, but most people take a nootropic every single day. They have a caffeine. I couldn't possibly function until I have my morning coffee. It's like people. It's like that the old Kellogg's advert where you see the guy walking down the stairs and then he has his Kellogg's and he's alive. It's almost like that for a lot of people with coffee, right?
Yeah, well, that guy was pre-diabetic. If you get to that point and you need that sugar to wake you up, then that's funny. But in terms of caffeine, if you become reliant on it, then it's definitely not good. And if someone says they need their coffee in the morning, you should not need your coffee. It should be a bonus. So actually, I fast with it. Sometimes I don't have it at all. And then some days I have 2 or 3, but half decaf and half caffeinated. So I'm a big fan of it. I mean, I enjoy it with my morning book, and I add in obviously collagen into there, and MCT oil, and butter as bulletproof coffee, which gives you fat fueled for the day, and your protein to kick you off as well, which I really need, or should I say, I really enjoy. But yeah, it is definitely a nootropic, definitely, and you can add extra things in there like lion's mane or different mushrooms as well. But I was
just going to ask you about lion's mane. Actually, I've got a client of mine, one of my private clients, and he started taking them probably about 2 months ago. And he just said that his creative thinking and his energy has just gone through the roof. And is lion's mane something you personally take, or when do you suggest for people to take it?
I've tested them all, pretty much. I liked chaga the most, and I think that was mainly for immune function. And I had that in my coffee every morning for 6 months or so. There's a brand from Finland called Food In, and they do a chaga and quality coffee, ground coffee. But the thing is with chaga, if you have it for too long, then it can cause the opposite effect and actually start hampering your immune system. So I use them sparingly. Lion's mane is good. Chaga is good. They all have different things. Reishi, red reishi is also good for immune function. And, if you're on an anti-parasite protocol and things like that. So they all have very specific applications. I don't like ruining my coffee too much. I like it with coffee, butter, MCT oil, and collagen, and enjoy that as my morning brew. And then, if I have another drink, then I may add mushrooms in there, but I do that probably once or twice a month now. I don't find it really gives me that much of a cognitive boost. The other smart drugs do.
Cool. So we've spoke about a huge amount, in fact, and I'm really grateful for having you on the show. You said that for you, one of the main, the things that you tried that is the sort of the non-negotiable that makes the biggest impact for you, as simple as it sounds and not as fancy as it sounds, of all the gadgets and everything you've tried, all the different supplements, is sleep and getting that good quality sleep. What was the worst thing you've tried? What's the thing that was just maybe had the complete opposite effect of what you thought it would have for you personally?
Really good question. Yeah, I don't generally talk about the things that don't work. I talk about the stuff that does. So it's really put me on the spot, which is great. I think going full keto would be my biggest regret, because I heard keto was good. I felt good with it when I got into ketosis, so I stayed in ketosis solidly for a year. But it meant I had way too much MCT oil, which meant I damaged my gut lining. It also stressed my liver, because no one ever talks about the liver stress, because your liver has to produce more bile to digest all these fats all the time. And I was supplementing with exogenous ketones all day, every day. So it ruined my gut, because I just wasn't giving it enough fiber or food to feed the bacteria, which meant I had pretty much, diarrhea almost for a year. And it took me a year to recover my gut from doing that. There's various other things as well, like, thinking going vegan was a good move. It can be for a while for people because they clear out a lot of the toxins, but after a while, they end up becoming deficient and stuff, and then they go back to, eating normal food and they feel good again. So I think there's a couple, those two things would probably be my things. The scariest moment would be when I self-administered magnesium IV to myself. And although I had been told what to do and taught how to do it, I was very nervous. And that was the first time. And I don't ever recommend anyone ever do that, ever. Always get a doctor to do it. I mean, I was under supervision by a medical practitioner at the time, but it was still very nerve-wracking. And that's when I kind of went, holy crap, I'm an extreme biohacker for sure. Because I remember seeing Ben Greenfield doing self-IV once, and I just thought he's a crazy fool. I'd never do that. And then I found myself doing it once upon a time. So yeah, don't ever do that, guys.
And what's on the bucket list? What's something that, I don't know whether it's new tech that's come out or new supplements that for you at some point in the next year or two, you're definitely going to be giving it a whirl?
I get probably 50 things sent to me every week at the moment, and it's like a lot of things are just more tech for something that you don't necessarily need, but someone does, not necessarily me. I think the biggest thing that anyone can do for their health is to utilize nature wherever possible, like grounding and sunlight and all these things. It's that is near the sea, so I can go and do paddleboarding every day and connect with nature more. So that's what I want to try incorporate into my life in a more full-time basis. If you're talking the funky tech stuff, there's a full EMS bodysuit that I've just heard about, which is a workout suit with EMS, which they're quite expensive, but that sounds quite exciting to be firing all your muscles and everything from a whole bodysuit. So yeah, that's what I'm quite excited to try that out.
Sounds cool. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. I know that people listening to this are definitely going to want to find out more. So you've got an event coming up in September 2021. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that event. And also you've just had a course that's recently come out. So how can people find out about both of those? Yeah,
well, the summit is really an amalgamation where I curate the biggest names from the health space from around the world. Dave Asprey from Bulletproof, Vishen from Mind Valley, John Gray, who wrote the book Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus, for instance, one of the best speakers of our time, and Dr. McCullough and all these guys. And
Jim Quick as well, I'm right in speaking at it as well.
Yeah, Jim Quick just confirmed 2 weeks ago, actually. I've been trying to convince him for well over a year, and he finally caved. So basically bringing those together, and then all the best brands into the same space, 100 brands. We do that every year pre-COVID. September 18th and 19th this year, we're 55% sold on tickets already. We're 75% sold on exhibitor spaces already. I mean, we've been powering on through COVID while everyone else has been, hit the pause button. We had to change the date, but really looking forward to September now as a result. And, from Boris's announcement, everything should be good. So I'm really excited about that. So that's London, 18th, 19th September in Business Design Centre in Angel. So that's really where you can meet all the speakers and check out all the technologies and try sample everything and see the best talks. For the digital course, I mean, my Instagram has grown massively in the last year from, kind of like 5,000 to nearly 40,000 people from just sharing topics and my biohacks, I guess. And one of the most frequently asked questions was, where do I start in biohacking or health optimization? So I decided to build a course, in COVID times, which is not a beginner's guide, that belittles it, more of like the fundamental guide to where you should start in your health optimization journey. And it talks about, a lot of the things that we talked about today, actually, timing of your day, your exercise, your sleep, when to eat, what to eat, how to eat, the mindset of eating. Also covers sunlight and grounding, oxygen and nature, diet, relationships and supplements and things like that as well. So it really does. And then it gets you to tweak your day very slightly for maximum output, compounded growth, basically. 10 days, step-by-step, hand-holding with the science and studies behind every single thing, but, in a non-geeky way. And that just came out this week, actually. So that can be found at course.healthoptimization.com. And the summit can be found at summit.healthoptimization.com. And I'm on Instagram at Tim Biohacker, all one word.
Well, I'll pop all the links and everything in the show notes so people can get access to those and find out a little bit more about them and be able to take action on that. So that would be great. So Tim, thank you so much for being a fantastic guest. It's been really, really interesting having the conversation. For everyone that's been listening, thank you for listening or watching. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, thank you for being with us. Make sure that you subscribe and again, go and check out Tim in the links that we've put in the comments. Tim, it's been great having you here. Thank you again. And everyone else, until next time, make it happen.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. Make sure you join Will's free Facebook group, the Make It Happen community. Please support the show by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Share this episode with at least one friend you think would benefit from it, and give Will a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, make it happen.